means truth. So tell me about your spiritual journey.
This is Lindsay Warwick, the conduit on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. This is our Tattva Tuesday interview series where I interview guests about their spiritual journey and their conception of God or source. And today I am here with my amazing friend Kelly in person at her adorable coffee shop in Surfside Beach, South Carolina. Hi, how are you? This is so fun. We're doing our literal coffee talk. Cheers.
With coffee.
With our, this is a Valentine's special.
Red velvet
mocha.
Latte. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Coffee and chocolate. I mean, you can't really go wrong with that.
It's really good. Mm-hmm.
So when did we meet?
Oh, goodness. Through Chandra.
Yes. At the Hipsy Gypsy event.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So I met Kelly. I don't know when. I don't know what is time.
A year ago, maybe?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So
and just love your vibe.
Cool. And I liked yours too. Like she read the cards and I was like, oh, I have those cards. And oh, like I was listening to her. So it was like really cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you opened up your shop a little while ago, and I've had the pleasure of doing some card readings here for you. And I'll be here leading meditations occasionally. And yeah, so let's talk about your spiritual journey.
Okay. It's all over the place.
That's fine. I love all over the place. I think my brain works the best. Like, okay.
Yeah.
You know,
that's how mine is. I think I like thrive in kind of that, not necessarily chaos, but it's like everything's outside the box kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I hear that.
So I now that I look back, it's wild how I can see bits and pieces of the spiritual journey that kind of just were like, oh, wow, that's what that was back then. Like looking back as a kid and my fascination with the stars and the telescope and sitting out and actually mapping out constellations by myself as a kid in the 80s in rural Spartanburg, South Carolina, sitting there like, you know, kind of just fascinated. I'm going to go to the stars, space, anything having to do with that. Just like, and I could never understand why, although I know kids are fascinated by space and science, but I couldn't understand what my fascination was. Like it was a huge one. And then it was even more fascination with, well, I'm an alien from another planet. Like I just came up with this whole like kind of life thing. Yes. And then I'm like,
that resonates.
I just had a wild imagination, you know? And then you look back and you're like, maybe I didn't have a wild imagination. Like, as I came up, I always knew something was different. I never fit in with the crowd. Like I never did. And then the more I learned, oh, wow, you're empath. What's happening to me? Why am I feeling other people's emotions? Why do people choose me out and seek me and talk to me and unload on me and they don't even know me kind of deal? And I'm like, how, like what? I just thought, oh, you know, this is the type of work you do. You're a counselor, you're an advocate, people find you. But then the more I realized, things started coming into kind of alignment. And more recently, I would say within the last probably 8 or 9 years is when I really kind of like said, okay, like this is it, something's different with me. And I started like, getting more into crystals and looking into Reiki, going to meditations and different things like that, and realizing that there is something bigger than us. And it's not even that it's, when you grow up and you go to church, you're taught God, of course, he's bigger than you.
Yeah.
But I knew there was something bigger than what we were taught. Like there's a cap that they put on it. And I feel like we need to remove the cap because there's so much more up there that we just don't even know.
Yeah.
So, and it really hits you it really hit me in my 40s, like, is where it really hit me.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you'd say like your spiritual awakening happened in your 40s.
It did. And what's so wild is I think I recently just went through another one, or either a different type of one. And I'll share this, which is the wildest thing ever, but
please do.
So I take, I've had depression and anxiety. I've battled it for 20 something years, and I've always taken meds. Well, within the last couple weeks, they actually recently changed one of my meds. And when they did, it messed with the serotonin, gave me a reaction in my brain. And my brain kind of did this whole thing where I didn't know what was real. I didn't know what was not real. And I was able to pull myself out, and they were like, oh, it's just a side effect of the med. But while all this was happening, all this stuff opened up. And I just,
oh, wow,
knew when I came out of it and the meds had worn off and I'd quit taking the meds and realized, that was just a bad side effect. I came out of it knowing so much more. And I think it was this that really opened
your third eye
within just the last 2 weeks. Like, it
Whoa.
was literally, it's like I was at peace with just knowing that.
And this just happened?
This just happened. Like this week, this past 2 weeks.
Oh my God. I'm like
This
laughing, not just because
No,
it's like such alignment that we're having a conversation
Right?
today.
Exactly.
Like, what are the odds of that? I just don't even,
wild.
I don't even believe in coincidence anymore.
No.
I just believe in like God incidences.
Yep.
That's
totally
really
agree.
fascinating. You said so many things that I want to touch back on. Like, you mentioned church.
Yeah.
So did you grow up religious?
I did, not in the sense of like hellfire and brimstone like you hear in the South a lot. Luckily, I grew up in the Lutheran church, which tended to be a little more liberal. It wasn't as strict. And so I actually got made fun of growing up for not being, say, Southern Baptist or some church like that, because we were different, know. And where I grew up in the Bible Belt, that's really all people knew. People thought we did what do y'all worship? And I'm like, what do we worship?
Wow, yeah.
You kind of have that. But I did grow up in the church with my grandparents, and luckily that was good. But they left us to be open-minded, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. I think I've shared this on the podcast a couple times that my family, there's some Catholicism there, and I was being raised in the Catholic Church, and it came time for me to get my confirmation. I'm smiling because just thinking about my mom, she said, you don't like have to if you don't want to. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. I had my confirmation name picked out and everything, and I just didn't.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I kind of broke out of the Catholic Church. What is that, 8th grade?
Yeah.
And then occasionally I've gone back for mass and stuff to be there with my grandmother, and I do enjoy it sometimes. And now I'm in this different journey of, I've been going to church as well. So that's like a whole other thing, but so you kind of broke out of the
out
church.
Of that mold. Yeah.
What age were you?
I was probably in my 20s, and I knew that I had talked to pastors. I had talked to other people. When I was in my 20s, while I was in college, I worked in the hospital ER as a patient representative. So I actually worked with the families who had lost someone or someone was hurt. Yeah. And so I was young when I hit this. So a lot of times we would work with the chaplains, and I would ask the chaplains, like, what if it's a different religion? What if it's someone who comes in who's not religious? Like, what is and at that point one of them told me, sometimes I think that we all worship God. We just all do it in a different way and get to it a different way.
Yes, that's exactly the whole purpose of the podcast. That was the whole concept.
That's just, it made sense with me. It stuck with me. Like,
makes sense with me God, too.
But there's angels, there's Buddha. There were masters in other religions who were there to like help you.
Definitely. And also I don't know if this resonates with you, but my belief is that we have God within us.
Yes.
And so we're all part of God,
100%.
you know, but yeah, it's interesting. And I think it's also really just fascinating that you've gone through this spiritual awakening later in life, and now even with the medication. And so, and then you said you stopped the medication.
I stopped the medication, so it's out of my
What
system.
did you learn?
So, but I learned.
Tell us.
it actually, like, what opened up for me was I was having these crazy dreams, these lucid dreams, which I had done before. And now that I look back, obviously you're like, okay, you were traveling or you were remembering something. These were so lucid. I was still stuck in that. Like, I still had a foothold in it. And I couldn't grasp, like, is this the real timeline? Is this the real timeline? Like, where am I supposed to be?
Right.
And I came back out of it, you know, okay, I'm back in this timeline. Okay, Kelly, I'm here, I'm safe. But it opened up this whole thing, like, there is so much more out there that we don't even know. There are beings out there. There are angelic beings. There are celestial beings out there that want to help us and love us. And it's just like the world blew off, and there was like so much more than just us on earth. It's like, I just know it, if that makes any sense. With and I'm at peace with it. Like, it all came after that.
I think that makes so much sense. And I do think that there's a lot outside of our understanding that exists, and also the brain capacity. So what's coming to me, you know, me, my science brain, and just some of the medical stuff, like the classes that I've taken, you know, we don't use a large percentage of our brain. We use a very small percentage of our brain.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the medication might have just opened up some area of your brain.
That's what I'm
thinking, that hadn't been open before. And then you kept pointing here, which is third eye, but on a physiological level, the third eye correlates to the pineal gland. So it's all making sense to me.
Yes.
That, you know, you opened up, and it's crazy. So you said that happened 2 weeks ago.
This happened, I just was
looking at the calendar.
I was coming out of it last week. So if anybody actually ran into me last week, I apologize if I was out of it, because I was literally out of it, trying to get this out of my system. But
I'm curious about what the medication is, unless you don't want to talk about that.
It was an SSR. It was a SSRI. They added another SSRI to an SSRI I was taking. It was called Remeron, or I think it's mirtazapine, which I have taken in the past by itself, but I had never taken it with another SSRI. And I was told by the doctor afterwards, she should have never added that. You know, it should have been something else. And he said, yes, it's definitely a reaction, but that whole mental thing that happened with that med,
it's a little scary.
It was very scary. I could see how people would end up in like mental hospitals.
Well, yeah,
I get it.
If you're at that point, then you have to, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But I was in my brain enough to be like, okay, Kelly, this isn't normal. This isn't real.
Like, you were present enough with yourself to say, that this is what's happening, and not go into the fear space, and just kind of like wait it out.
Yeah. And it did scare me at first. Like,
sounds like a mushroom trip.
It was crazy. I first came out of it, and
like
the first
a long trip.
It was for
like you're like, I
week.
went into the ethers and I got information.
I did.
And I was like, what medicine was that, Kelly?
And it'll make you that medicine will make you dream like crazy dreams.
Oh yeah. That's where I was going with it. The timeline of your dream. I also believe in galactic beings and, you know, things outside of our understanding. I don't believe we're alone in the universe. Like, none of that. I guess 2 weeks ago, right before my galactic birthday, which was like the end of January this year, the night before, I don't know if I shared this on the podcast yet. I've definitely told a couple of my friends. I told my client yesterday, and she was like, wow. So I had this dream that this red van very weird, came out of the sky. And I was in this large field. It was nighttime, so there was all these amazing stars. The red van came down and crashed. And then these blue beings came out of it, like really tall, like not like Avatar though, but like blue, like celestial, starry.
Oh,
And they
nice.
walked over to me. I was alone in the field, and one of them put their hand on my heart and said, "We're here now. It's time. Go tell everyone." And then I woke up and I was like, I have to go tell everyone.
Oh my gosh.
And, you know, I talked to Sarah
wild.
Nicole about it. It's her birthday today. Yay.
Oh, Sarah, happy birthday.
Well, when this airs, it's not, but while we're recording it.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. It's so funny. Anyways. And she's like, yeah. She's like, those sound like, you know, like she does her galactic readings.
Does it sound like blue avians? Is that what
That's what she said.
Yeah.
And she said that they don't show up on galactic readings because we're not really sure where they come from.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know if they're Lemurian or Atlantean or the blue avians or whatever, but yesterday I worked with a client and I just see her as one of these beings. And I have my Divine Masters deck, my Kyle Gray deck, and it has the blue beings on the front.
Yeah.
And she pulled a card yesterday and it was the Lemurians. And we were just laughing, and, you know, I told her the story and she said, yeah, you know, so it's just, yeah, I don't know. I had to just share that.
I love the Lemurian energy. Like, I love it.
Yeah.
I've had the chakras, like the Lemurian chakras opened.
Oh, wow. I've never had that. What does that mean?
My friend, Dr. Wendy Parole, she's actually in North Carolina, but she still comes to the Charleston and the coastal area.
Yeah.
And before she left the Charleston area to go to North Carolina, she did sessions in her home. And one of them she offered was to, if you had Lemurian like ancestry or felt you did, to like open your chakra. She did a ceremony with and called in the Lemurian mothers, and
and you did that?
It was amazing.
Oh my gosh. I want to go to Mount Shasta.
Me too. I do too, so bad. Yes.
Yeah, I really do. I feel more called to, I don't know, I guess, you know, I feel called to like Atlantean energy, and I feel like there's a portal here, and there's theories about Myrtle Beach, about it being a part of Atlantis or near Atlantis. Yeah, that's what I've heard, but we don't know for sure.
I think that's
but
awesome.
The Lemurian energy. I had a Lemurian crystal.
Oh, I've got a quartz
from Gifu actually, but
nice.
It is no longer in my presence. I left it somewhere that I'm probably never going to get it back, but it was amazing, that crystal. I love, you know, we love our crystals.
I have a Lemurian quartz and I love it. It's like very strong energy, and I have their card deck, so I'll pull cards from time to time. And they just have really peaceful energy. I've been read before and told by multiple people that I am connected to Atlantis.
The blue aliens, the blue people, the blue people that told me they're here.
So
that dream, like, did you feel that when I told that story?
I did, because when I came out of whatever I was in, one of those dreams I was in, the aliens were here, and I just knew it, and it was okay. It was like, they're here, no big deal. We all know it. They're just here flying in the, you know. And so I've been watching a lot of these, you know, videos, people coming out who supposedly channel like the Galactic Federation and different things like that.
Oh yeah, I've watched some of those too, the Galactic Federation.
Yes, I love those.
It's all very fascinating, you know. And then we could go on like a huge tangent of like the different, like, you know, people, like, I've channeled Archangel Michael since I was a kid.
Wow, that's awesome.
But it's like, is Archangel Michael also, is it like an ET?
Yeah.
Or galactic being? Or
yeah. Because
super angel. Because I've channeled a lot of messages. I have journals full that I should probably publish, but
that would be awesome.
I need someone to assist me with that. So just throwing that out there. But yeah, just different downloads about like the stories of religion, that, you know, and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, it's so interesting that people can channel, right? And when we talk about channeling, we talk about like tapping into higher levels of consciousness. You also want to be mindful of what you're channeling.
True.
So you want to like call in protection energy and everything like that. But
he's who I protect me with.
Archangel Michael.
Oh, I always ask for the protection.
Oh yeah, that's the first.
He's just amazing. His energy is amazing.
Yeah, that was the first guide that ever came through to me. And every psychic I went to for years would say, "Who's Michael? Who's Michael?" I'm like, I don't know. no.
Yeah.
And then actually she'll be on the podcast in a few weeks. A woman who channels the Archangel Metatron reached out to me one day and said, I have a message for you from the angelic realm, and that you channel Archangel Michael, and this is what you can do, and all this stuff. And I freaked out. I was like, oh my God, what does that even mean? And then another woman who is on my podcast, she channels Archangel Raphael, same message, like you channel Archangel Michael, and this is what you should do and what you can do. And so but we all have our things, right? Like you feel connected to the Lemurian energy. And so, go into that. That's what I always encourage people, is like to just go into like what they're drawn to or brings them joy or
that kind of
passion.
Thing. It's fascinating. I love it because, like you said, we don't know if the angels are aliens, quote unquote, celestial beings, quote unquote. I've heard stories where a lot of the older, like Sumerian gods or goddesses, are, say, like celestial beings now, or they're the aliens we would speak to now, or whatever. So I mean, I think there's just so much to delve into, because so much of it is like, if you listen to it, the people who channel, it's all the same message basically. So it's like
a lot of oneness. It's that higher consciousness messaging, and like Christ consciousness messaging 100%. As well. And you said the Sumerians, and immediately like the visions that come to me are like the hieroglyphics in the pyramids, or like, even more ancient civilizations. They have these, they have like these beings, gods and goddesses. And it's like, well, what are those? And then it's like, did humans really build the pyramids?
Exactly.
Oh my God, we're going on.
I love it.
This is so perfect. This background,
we're like, exactly.
What's going on? That's so great. And since we're here, we're talking about spirituality. Oh my gosh, where was I yesterday? Where we were talking about how spirituality is also a component. It has to be a component to healing. Yes. Which is like a huge mission for me now. And I know you worked in the mental health field for a while. And so I'd love to just hear your perception or some of your experiences on that. Like, do we believe that mental illness, like, what do you believe? Like the mental illness is, because even recently I participated at that talk at the Soulfish Center. And one of the statistics was talking about depression isn't actually a chemical imbalance. It's other stuff. So I'm wondering what you think, like what you've experienced with mental illness. Like, is it?
It's, so just a little bit on my background.
That wasn't a question, but you got
I got it. I got what
I'm like, you just were literally like, okay, sure. We're here. We're here. We're here together. So I'm like, that wasn't a question, but everything is fine.
A lot of my background, my bachelor's degree is in criminal justice, which was a social science. So I had to take a lot of psychology, sociology. My master's is in public administration, but I did a lot of my work as like victim advocacy, social work, that type of thing. And then I was an EMT for a while as well. So I did emergency medicine. So I kind of combined a lot of that because we had a psych ER when I worked there. I was always afraid to talk about my own personal mental health, because when you would talk about people with mental, they're crazy, or they're blank crazy, and so this is like the first time I've really opened up about
I hate that labeling and terminology, and I hate the stigma.
I do too, because it's just now where I'm like, okay,
it's all right that
it's okay that I have depression. It's okay that I have anxiety.
Why is it more okay for someone to be diabetic, or why is it more okay for someone to have arthritis and talk about it, or whatever else, glaucoma, whatever? But then why is mental illness, like, why is that such a stigma? I hear you, and I'm so glad that you are here just so openly talking about even like your recent experience with the medication, the pharmacology stuff.
Yep, because it can. I mean, when we would see people in, like the psych ER, sometimes it was med reactions, sometimes it was because they weren't taking their meds, and you would talk to people And if you like listening to me coming out of what I came out of, people would be like, she's crazy. There's something wrong with her. She's schizophrenic.
Oh yeah. You'd be slapped with a label.
Exactly. And
that's a diagnosis.
How some of the people I worked with were. Like, it was always talking about aliens again, but were they really communicating with them? Like, we don't know.
That's the thing. And that's, yeah.
He would say stuff like, we had one who was a schizophrenic, and he would always say, if I take my medicine, he said, it gets my superpowers away, takes my superpowers away. So I don't know if he thought he could fly. He was seeing different things, but like in A Beautiful Mind, he quit taking his meds. He couldn't do the math problems because they flew off the paper at him because of his hallucinations. And he was able to be this genius mathematic. He just had to realize that these were hallucinations.
Mm-hmm.
And so you always wonder, because some people become super hyper religious when they're mentally ill, and they would come to the door and say, I'm Jesus, or I'm so-and-so. I mean, did Jesus come back as that person, or did whoever come back as that person? Like,
so interesting.
There's always that.
Mm-hmm.
But then I feel like me, myself being, and working with people like I have, because I did a lot with advocacy. So I did a lot of victim advocacy. Domestic violence was a huge thing I did for years.
I love that you did that.
Yes, sexual assault.
Oh yeah, as someone who's experienced like DV, and it's something that I'm
you have to talk about it.
And I had to advocate for myself through different scenarios, and the system is so fucked. But that's a whole other conversation.
We can have that whole conversation about the law and how bad it is. But yeah, I would advocate for women who couldn't.
Well, and men too can be victims of it for sure.
100%.
It's not like a gender thing.
One of our officers was, and he didn't hit his wife back because he's like, A, I was taught not to, and B, I'll hurt her if I hit her back.
Yeah.
And he's like, so he just finally called the police because she just kept hitting him. So men can be, it's a control tactic generally is what it is. But when you're in that situation, your mental health is like just squished. Like, you're told,
oh my God, I know. Like, I mean, some of the things that I experienced, I just remember when I finally got out of it and I had these open conversations, like with my older brother, especially him, because we're close. I love all my brothers, but
but you're close.
We have like a psychic connection, my older brother and I. Like, he knew, like, the day after something major happened, he texted me and was like, hey, are you okay? And I was like, no.
Oh, wow.
But when I told him about some of the things that I allowed, he was like, where is my sister? Like, what the fuck? But anyway, God, I feel like we could have so many different conversations.
Because it goes around mental health. You get into that spot and you feel like you don't deserve any better. And so a woman coming out of that it's very hard. And so I like the spiritual aspect of working with victims, because you can also empower them in other ways, that you don't have to have a man, because so many are raised in that culture where the man provides everything. So I have to have a man to take care of me.
Yeah.
And
just some of the things. Yeah. That's a whole other conversation, but
it's nice to have that spiritual kind of holistic more background to build them up versus, and if they need mental health, and most of them are going to need some type of counseling.
Oh God. Yeah.
I mean, it's trauma.
I'm a big proponent of, yoga, meditation, all the things. I've also been, I don't have any shame. I've been medicated in the past.
Yeah.
My drinking was really out of control in college, that I would go to the psychiatrist and lie about my drinking, and they diagnosed me as bipolar.
Oh, wow.
Because of the episodes I had when I was drunk.
Yeah.
I left out the drunk part.
You just left it out.
Yeah. So and then, for a little while I was on anti-anxiety, antidepressant medicine. So like, I am a proponent of all the things.
Oh,
whatever you need to find homeostasis and get that emotional regulation in check. But I haven't been on medication in years now, but there's a lot of things I do to maintain emotional regulation.
Yeah.
But I do want to circle back to what you were saying about the patients that you work with, and they would talk about all these things and you would question, like, well, is this schizophrenia or is this a gift?
Yeah.
And I used to work with kids, special needs children, and some of them, like the things they would say, I'm like, oh my God, they're just so gifted. But then they would be diagnosed as like autistic or something. And it's like, is that autism, or is that this child has gifts that, and why aren't we as a society anymore like supporting those types of gifts? But so that's what you were seeing.
That's what I was seeing
in the mental health field. And so how long were you in that field? And then why did you leave?
It was more, I got into it basically by doing social work and working with victims. So you were kind of put into that mental health aspect. And so I did a lot of it through case management, whether I was working with domestic violence victims, working with kids who had records or whatever and just needed jobs. You're always kind of in that mental health type field.
Yeah.
And emergency medicine drew me a lot closer to the actual diagnoses and the actual, what's going on and what the doctors are saying and what are we doing to try to treat it. But when you just work back there in the psych ward and you're just, back there as the tech for the day, you really do question a lot of things because they say Joan of Arc heard God when she was
Archangel
17?
Michael went to Joan of Arc, actually.
See?
And that's so funny, not funny you're mentioning her, because oh my God, I felt her energy so much yesterday, because I posted yesterday's podcast, and my friend is a master herbalist and works with cannabis and the endocannabinoid system in the body.
Yeah.
And she was concerned yesterday that the post or the podcast was getting shadow banned.
Oh.
So I was like on my Joan of Arc shit yesterday. Like, why is there media censorship? Like, that's ridiculous. Like, cannabis isn't bad. Like, I mean, I don't smoke anymore or do any of that.
But it's not bad.
But no, exactly. So I love that you just mentioned Joan of Arc. And they say the story of Joan is that Archangel Michael went to her and said, hey, by the way, you have to save France.
Wow. And
she was like, okay. Like, and I think she was 16 or something. And her, I just got chills. Her statue in France, when I saw it in Paris, I was crying.
Oh.
Yeah, I love Paris so much.
Oh, I would love to go.
I love the Joan of Arc energy. That's like the energy
she's that
I carry.
She's that chick.
I try. Yeah, she is. So
and that kind of, and I get that because I was a firefighter EMT, so it was like that.
They call on energy. The Joan of Arc. So so sorry to go on that tangent.
No,
so why were you mentioning her?
Because
that's what
her
story is.
Yeah, like she was talking. So are you talking to Jesus when you come up and tell me that Jesus is here or whatever? How do I know you're not channeling Jesus? We don't know. Like, are you crazy and you have a chemical imbalance? Which, like, I hate that word too. But are you truly like channeling someone and maybe you don't know how to handle it? Maybe it's coming across as you're mentally ill, but you're really,
tapping into something that other people aren't open to or understand. And then I think when people aren't open and they don't understand and they have fear, then people get labeled and it turns into negative connotations and everything like that. But
exactly. Once you start mentioning aliens, schizophrenia, that's what people start talking
about.
Literally,
it just goes right.
Yeah.
Who came up with the schizophrenia diagnosis?
Exactly. Like, right. So like, and
do you ever think about things like that?
That is true. Like, who came
up
with
who literally like decided
that you're schizophrenic and that you're not actually having,
and who knows, maybe in like, in indigenous cultures or other older communities, you weren't schizophrenic, you were a shaman.
That's what I was going to say. Maybe
you were a
medicine woman.
I know.
That is so cool because my great grandma was the medicine woman of my grandmothers. So my dad's mom, they're Appalachian. I'm very Appalachian if you can't tell by my accent. And so
you have to listen to the last podcast because that's where Nikki lives, and she talked about surviving the hurricane and
just my people.
Yeah, you got to listen to it.
Oh, I love it. So
she's not from there, but she's very passionate about
Appalachia.
Yes, and oh my God, every time I go there in Asheville, I cry.
I love Asheville.
And I'm just touching all the trees.
I love Asheville.
The energy, there's nothing like it.
It is. It's almost like a little miniature vortex in itself. I feel like it totally is.
Mhm.
And so all my people on both sides, like my ancestry DNA says I'm like 50% Scottish. So like they all came over and into Appalachia and then migrated down to work in the mills. But my grandmother's grandmother, my dad's great grandmother, was in when the mills came down and people were working in the mills. People were poor in Spartanburg County, working in the cotton mills and everything. She knew from Appalachian her roots what plants she could pick to help certain people. And so she was known as the country witch doctor. You would go to her and pay her just a little bit of money. She would cure you versus them having to pay a doctor a lot of money or take it out of their paycheck and go to the mill. So my grandma was like the country like witch doctor of
So it definitely like runs in your
in
your blood, this like healing and want to I love that.
Really cool. On that side, and then on my mom's side, like my great grandfather was the one that could like, have you ever heard of the people that could like stare the warts off of you or whatever? He could supposedly do all. I never met him, so I don't know.
Well, maybe now you're being opened up to all your abilities.
Maybe that's just kind of cool to think about, though, you know. And I feel like my grandfather, I've been told he's one of my guides, which is really cool. So
yeah, definitely, I feel that. I do feel that for you.
So that's really cool.
My grandfather is also one of my guides. Like when I got attuned to Reiki, I saw him, and he's come to me in dreams as well. So I definitely feel like very connected to him, and so I love that. That's so cool.
So you get to have your whole family kind of like you said, the lineage and everything.
Well, on my mom's side too, the Italian side. So that's my grandfather on my Polish side, my dad's side. But on my mom's side, there's been all kinds of interesting spiritual things. Like my mom has had like dreams, and one time she told me this story. She actually like helped somebody solve a murder.
Oh wow.
From a dream she had.
Oh, now that's really cool.
And then my aunt has seen spirits in different homes she's lived in. And then my grandmother on that side has actually like talked in tongues, and
oh, that's cool.
Well, scared the shit out of my grandfather. He was like, "What is going on?"
What is that?
So I feel like it's on both sides. Like, you know, my dad's my grandmother on my dad's side, she's very religious and spiritual. She has the most faith of anyone I've ever met. And then my mom's side is just like really interesting, like kind of scary spiritual stuff. But and I think that we all have the ability to tap into it if we decide to.
I think so too. I think totally. And some people are more open. My mom was open. She believed in spirits, believed in ghosts. My dad's always been more scientific, like prove it to me. But when he realized that they had like discovered that there are other dimensions because of physics and whatever, and this is crazy.
Physics is so cool.
Isn't
Quantum
cool?
Physics is cool.
And it's super cool. And he's like, you know, they've discovered other dimensions. And I'm like, that's really cool.
It's super cool. So when did you let's talk, since we're in your coffee shop, right? Let's talk about the journey to here, to the tie-dyed coffee bean.
So I, been doing 20 years off and on, whether it was emergency med or social work. And I was tired.
Did you burn out?
I was burned
There's
out.
a lot of burnout in those fields.
I burned out. The last place I worked was with kids who had been abused, and it was time to get out, because my soul and healing myself, like I really needed to heal myself too, from listening to all those stories all those years and holding all of that for
holding
all those
the
years.
space.
And so my husband retired, and I had always wanted to own a little coffee shop. I've always said that. And then I wanted it to be hippie, but I wanted it to be like where community could gather, where like-minded people could come in. We could do meditations. We can, you can talk about aliens and I'm not going to laugh at you. Like we can whatever you want to talk about, crystals, whatever. Or if you just want to come in and talk about the Red Sox games, even though I don't watch the Red Sox, you know what I mean? Like you can. So that's really what I wanted. It was just this laid back, hippie, beachy, coffee vibey kind of place where I could serve cool coffee and, you know, just have people kind of
yummy coffee.
Yay.
And it is very vibey here.
Yay.
We're kind of in the back part of the coffee shop because it's open and there's a customer out there right now. But yeah, I think you've achieved your goal of creating an awesome space where dogs are welcome.
Yes, you can
I almost brought Sophie Girl with me today, but I know I really wanted to bring her, but I'm going somewhere after this.
That's right.
Can't bring her in there. So, but I guess I could have left her here for an hour. Like, I'll have a good time. She'll be the shop dog for a minute.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's super vibey space here. The coffee's really good. The vibes are really good. And now you've also started these community events here. So you've held a meditation.
Yes.
Where I'm leading a meditation next week.
On the 10th.
Well, yeah. So we're just pre-recording this, but it's fine for the podcast.
On the 10th. Yeah.
And you know, Leah held a sacred circle gathering here. So the space is super vibey. Sarah, Nicole, and I will be here for a mystic night we're having here.
Mystic night. Was it coffee, crystals?
Coffee, crystals, and cards.
Yes.
So Sarah, Nicole with Twisted Goddess Crystals will be here selling her crystals. And I'll be here doing intuitive readings.
Yay!
And Kelly will be here doing the coffee, doing all the things. And yeah, so I feel like you've stepped in. This is like your dream, and you've stepped into it, and you bring all those experiences with you, and you still attract interesting people here.
Yes, and I think that's
we laugh about that, about how we do that. It's the light in us attracts interesting,
and you can't make it up. Like
literally, you can't. Literally, we could,
and that's kind of what I love. I mean, the empathy or whatever, you know, it does attract certain people.
It's taught me boundaries. Also,
it's teaching me boundaries.
Yeah, you have to
have terrible boundaries.
Hold your own energy, and then also just in all the different things that you've done, and you know what you do now when you interact with people, it's important to have like a cleansing, a spiritual cleansing practice. Like you sprayed your, you know, the sage, the white sage spray to just clear the energy, and so I'm just grateful that we were able to do this today. It's
been really cool.
It's been very cool. Is there anything else that you feel called to share?
I mean, other than just like, I really feel like, you know, in my 40s, like that's when it really hit. And it was so wild that we had scheduled this and that happened last week.
I mean,
wild.
I hate to say this, but I'm not surprised. Like, like people will schedule things with me, and then like all this stuff starts to like shift and change and open up, and I'm like, that's basically what happens.
And
when you set the intention of whatever,
and you feel
it's literally perfect because now like you had all that to talk about.
I know, exactly.
Sorry.
And it makes you feel crazy, but then at the end you're like, I'm glad I went through that. You know,
but when you're going through it, you're like, what the hell am I doing? This is terrifying. And then you get to the other side,
sleeping,
and you look, you look at the lessons or the blessings, usually both. There was something that just came in that I wanted to say, but I think it left me.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's totally fine.
I just
No, it's fine. That's what you're here for. I want you to. That's what the podcast is. Darn. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh,
it's okay. It left me.
Well, it definitely opened. I knew there was more out there, but now it's like just this.
That's what I wanted to share. It just came in. Yeah, so I don't know if I've shared this on the podcast, but Allison, Clarity, and I, we did an Akashic record retrieval, a name retrieval. And this was 2 years ago now, but we practiced it at her house. So she took me through this journey, and my Akashic name is Ashalika, which means transmuter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And in that vision, I was holding like lightning bolts, and she jokes with me, I'm a human catalytic converter.
That is
like for a while, I wanted to get a catalytic converter tattoo. And when I went to go get it, my tattoo guy was like, I'm not doing
You're
that.
not doing that. He's like, no.
Like, that's too much, like, for your finger. So instead I have this like little lightning bolt here on my finger, and I have one on my arm. But yeah, so when you said, yeah, after we talked and set the date, I went through a freaking thing. I was like, shit, like,
crazy.
I just have accepted, you know, I used to be very sensitive about how people receive me or perceive me. I would take it personal, you know, because of that transmutation, that conduit type energy. And now it's like, yeah, that's just basically like who I am.
But it's cool because, like I said, while it sucked
You're
going
welcome.
through it, really did. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Well, it was also part of your path, right? Like the medicine, and
it really was.
It's just all part of what's coming.
It is, and I just feel so much more awake and not the physical
sense, and
a lot of awake
and now you have you have more knowledge to share.
I do. It's like just take the cap off of earth. There's so much more.
Yeah, and then when you have like that knowledge too, you have like more of a capacity for you know, other people's experiences, and it's like that level of judgment goes down.
Oh, 100%.
Your compassion opens up. So
and because it's hard sometimes to live in gratitude and live in joy. And so
it's a practice.
It's a huge, and you have to make yourself every day, I am grateful for this. And when you live in gratitude, I've noticed things do go better.
Totally.
It's just reminding yourself, you know, how blessed we are every day, regardless. You know, things may not be going right, but I got a roof over my head. I've got this, I've got food. I'm blessed.
Yes. You know, keeping it simple sometimes is really everything. But I'm so grateful that you were able, that I was able to come here today and drink coffee with you. If you want to, you should come here and check out Kelly's coffee shop. It's really lovely. Or come to any of the events that are being offered here. And if you're open to people connecting with you, like how do they connect with you?
We're on Facebook at the tie-dyed coffee bean. We're also on Instagram. It's hippie_beans.
Hippie beans.
Hippie beans. And then we have a website. It's tie-dyed.coffee. It's really weird. Not .com, .coffee. So it's really kind of cool. But yeah, or just call us, look us up on Google. We're on Google, the tie-dyed coffee bean and Surfside.
Yay. So. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone who tuned in. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, or if you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much. Be sure to like and subscribe me. If you're interested in being on the podcast, or if you know someone that would be a cool person to talk to, which I think everybody's cool to talk to. So hit me up. But thank you for listening, and we will check you out next time. Bye.